Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the ALS Association Greater Philadelphia and Western Pennsylvania chapters for today's PA State Advocacy Lunch and Learn. I am Kelsey Schooley, the Director of Marketing and Advocacy with the Western PA chapter. So before we begin, I want to remind everybody that this session is being recorded and for attendees to please stay muted. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to send them in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. If we have time for a quick Q&A at the end, we can answer some questions live, but if we run out of time, we have a pretty packed agenda. We'll be sure to send answers to your questions in a follow-up email along with the session recording. So I am now pleased to introduce Tony Heil, my PA colleague from the East, to get this lunch and learn started.
Thanks, Kelsey. I'm very excited to be able to work together with the Western PA chapter. We collaborate very well for our mutual goals for ALS community. And for those who don't know, my grandfather had ALS, and while I live here in the greater Philadelphia area, I am still a Penguins fan, and my grandfather got some really supportive care from the Western PA chapter many years ago when he had ALS. I am going to introduce quickly a person who also has ALS in his family and has made ALS a priority in Harrisburg. We have a line item in the state budget that has grown over the years, but it wouldn't be there if he hadn't made a call in 2012 to get some funds in there and say, this is how you can grow money over time to benefit your cause. So State Representative Bryan Cutler, now the Speaker of the House, no matter what else he's doing, he always makes our cause and our families a priority, and we appreciate that. So Bryan, if you're able to hear me, if you're able to say a couple words, we'd love to say thanks and share that.
No, thank you very much, Tony. I apologize. I actually have to be on the road during this, but didn't want to miss it. I just want to thank everybody for all their hard work and appreciate the advocacy days and all of the efforts that you guys put into it, and just really appreciate the efforts of both the Philadelphia and the Western chapters. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you, and I think that hearing that Bryan is on the road, this is a reminder that he is probably one of the busiest people in Harrisburg, and like I said, still makes ALS a top priority. One of our top priorities, of course, in PA advocacy is money for care services, but we also work together both for advocacy purposes and our general work to support ALS research. Yesterday, I was thrilled, literally really thrilled, to see my friend Dr. Jill Yersak in person yesterday in New Jersey. She has been working with the ALS Association for nearly a decade in various capacities. For me personally, what matters most about what she does is she takes the complexities of ALS research and makes it readily available for anyone to understand. So she's going to talk briefly about some of the hopeful news in ALS research and why your work matters, because through advocacy, through your fundraising efforts, through your awareness efforts, we're making some of these research activities possible. And it's a very exciting time, probably more so than any time my 10 years here when it comes to ALS research. So Jill, thank you for being here, and we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Hi, Tony. Hi, everyone. I'm Jill Yersak. I'm the Vice President of Mission Strategy at the ALS Association. And like Tony said, we actually got to see each other for the first time, first meeting I've had in person, almost a year and a half. I was so excited to see Tony and some of our patient friends in the areas and our families. But thank you to you guys, especially Tony and Kelsey, for organizing this great event. I do live in the Cherry Hill area, New Jersey, and I have worked with the Philadelphia chapter for years, even before I had this job. And I really always enjoyed participating in our local Vincent area. And Ryan also knows that my husband went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, so we also have a big Pittsburgh connection in our family too. So always happy to see him. So at the association, we are really proud to be the only ALS organization that works in all three mission areas, which is care, advocacy, and research. And COVID hasn't stopped us. We continue to work really hard to drive research towards finding cures and treatments for ALS. And when we fund research, we don't put all our eggs in one basket. With the help of ALS experts from all over the world, we pick the most cutting edge and promising research to fund. So our chief scientist doesn't make these decisions on his own. He has a lot of help from a lot of great experts from all over the world. And so right now we currently fund over 170 active projects in 15 countries, and those numbers always changing because research grants start and stop periodically throughout the year. So first, I just want to touch on, there's some really promising trials in the pipeline right now. So last year, Biogen, a pharmaceutical company that we partner with, announced promising phase 2 clinical trial results from their drug tofersen that targets a common genetic cause of ALS, a gene called SOD1. And it showed a slowing of disease progression in people with people on the drug, and it is also looked to be safe. So it's now in a larger phase 3 study. It's called Valor trial, and we hope to hear exciting results later this year. And hopefully, and I'm a very optimistic person, as Tony knows, to be the first ALS gene therapy on the market. What that means is that people carrying the SOD1 gene could benefit from potentially slowing or even stopping disease progression. And once this happens, I believe it'll open the floodgates for other gene therapies to come to market, targeting the 30+ genes known to cause genetic ALS. And I encourage all our families with ALS to talk to their doctors about participating in ALS clinical trials and studies. And I know eligibility criteria for ALS trials are really stringent, so there are other opportunities for to engage in other studies, such as the ALS Focus survey program, which is designed to better understand patient and caregiver burden, and natural history studies or other biomarker studies. And natural history studies are really to understand how a person could progress with their disease over time, which is also really important and valuable information. And when I'm done in the chat, I'll give some links to get up-to-date information on studies in your area and for information about ALS Focus. And being from the area, I know there's some really great institutions that are running some great trials and studies that we hope you can participate in. And over the years, we have funded a ton of studies in our backyard. I am biased because I'm from the area, but there are a lot of great institutions that in our area and in Philadelphia, Delaware, and in New Jersey. So right now, we're funding Dr. Zachary Simmons, who we know well, at Penn State Hershey Medical Center. And he is doing some important work to improve ALS respiratory health management through telemonitoring and nurse health coaching. And this study began really before COVID even happened. And it's even more relevant now, since many of our families across the country are using telemedicine more than ever to receive multidisciplinary care, go to their neurologist, attend support groups. I know that the Philadelphia area has been doing a great job with, and even participate in trials. A lot of our pharma companies are coming up with really creative ways to make sure that people with ALS and their families can still participate in trials. And this study is really designed to understand how telehealth and health coaching could lead to superior patient outcomes in respiratory health compared to current standard of care, increase quality of life, and hopefully even decrease burden on families by doing everything on through a telehealth. And they're coming up some really cool ways to test your breathing online, and they're called at-home spirometry tests. So you don't have to go to the doctor to take those tests, and you can get some really great information at home, which is very, very cool. And I want to mention, since this is the Advocacy Day, our Advocacy Lunch and Learn, this effort really ties nicely with our focus on telehealth and advocacy at the ALS Association and at a local level here in Philadelphia. So we need to encourage our Congress to support expanded telehealth and remote clinical trials, which are really two positive outcomes that happened due to COVID-19. And there's not much positives come out of this, but this is two things I can point to that are positive. So to be specific, and Tony can give you more information about this, and Ryan, is to encourage Congress to co-sponsor and pass the Creating Opportunities for Now for Necessary and Effective Care Technologies, or for short, the Connect for Health Act. That was a mouthful, which is HR 2903. And this is to expand coverage of telehealth services through Medicare and to make COVID-19 flexibilities permanent that are now in place. I also encourage our congressmen to co-sponsor and pass the temporary reciprocity to ensure access to treatment, or the TREAT Act, which is HR 708. And this is to provide temporary licensing reciprocity for all health practitioners for COVID and future public health emergencies. So really, we have a great opportunity here to make lemonade out of this huge lemon of the pandemic to help our families with ALS. So I really encourage everyone on this call to get out there and advocate, to tell your friends to advocate, tell your families to advocate, whoever wants to listen to advocate. And Tony and Ryan, our leadership at your chapters, are really great resources to help you navigate advocacy at a state level and at the national level. So again, thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna stop here. I know we have a tight agenda and I try to pack in as much as possible. Thank you so much for having me, the opportunity today.
Thank you, Jill. And so everyone here, a lot of people here have participated in ALS advocacy in the past in one way or another, whether it is national or statewide. And you know that we split up our meetings between, I attend meetings, Kelsey attends meetings, but usually you have someone else that will be running those meetings, a social worker with our chapter, a nurse, another board member or staff person. So Melissa Coll is just going to give a brief background about like how she and others will help run the meetings that you participate in and make it effective to share your stories. So Melissa, can you just say a couple words here, please?
Hi, everyone. There's so many people on here. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Melissa Coll. I'm one of the social workers with the Greater Philadelphia chapter. I've been with the chapter almost 13 years, so this is probably my 12th or 13th year of doing advocacy. From the first time I did it, I just fell in love with this part of my job because, well, one, it's so important, and it's also just so empowering. So for those of you that this is your first time doing this, I know that it can be a little nerve-wracking, and I actually was talking with Ann Cooney, one of the other social workers that's on here today, earlier, and we were both saying how we're nervous. So even 12 years in, it's just one of these things that makes you feel a little nervous, but it's so important. So in preparing for your meetings, I just want to emphasize how powerful and really important it is just sharing your story, trying to give, whether you're in front of representatives or legislative aid, no matter who you're talking to, just trying to give them a picture of your daily life and the impact that ALS has had on you. In years past, when we pre-pandemic, when we were in person, we encouraged people to kind of write your story out. If you can keep it to 1 or 2 pages. Sometimes it's good, if you are struggling a little bit with nerves about presenting, like to have that as a guide or touch points for you when you're sharing your story. It's also a nice leave behind. So I know the leaders in all the meetings will be getting email addresses to make follow-up emails on our scheduled meetings. So we can certainly add any attachments with the story or pictures, however you feel most comfortable. But really just sharing the impact of this disease. Some of the people that we meet in these meetings have never heard of ALS, so we're, really educating them on that. But whatever your comfort level is to share your story, that's really what's most empowering. Do you want me to add anything else, Tony?
Well, Melissa, you know that, like you said, people can be nervous, but people don't need to be an expert in the way government works. They don't need to be an expert in our services. The lead in the meeting can know those things, but you just have to be an expert in your story, right?
Exactly. And even the priorities that are, listed, don't worry about getting caught up in the wording or any of that. The leads will take care of all of that. I think really the emphasis is sharing your story and, how ALS impacts you and your family. That's really what is most powerful. And also just logistically, everyone that's scheduled for meetings will be receiving a Zoom link from their leader of their meeting for each of your meetings.
Thank you, Melissa. And if there are some people who are in this call today who, for one reason or another, may be busy tomorrow, or they just aren't ready to do a meeting, but they are not scheduled for a meeting. If you do want to be part of meetings and you have not gotten anything from me on that, it's because I was not aware that you wanted to be in meetings. I can still get you into some of these Zooms, so please email me, Tony@alsphiladelphia.org. If you're from our side, of the state or email Kelsey from her side. And the meetings are all on Zoom or Teams, and they're targeted for specific reasons where you'll share your story and talk about the need to increase funding for ALS care services. Our goal this year is to increase it from 1 million to 1,200,000, so 1.2 million in the state budget. Or if representatives are eager to fund more of it, that would be great. We would take any increase because it's so important right now, especially as fundraising has been a challenge for all areas. And you know that ALS, our services have helped keep people safe at home throughout this pandemic. So our services are needed more than ever for people with the 1,200 people with ALS across the state. And the legislators are actually more your friends than anything else. No matter what you think about politics, people who are there to serve. One of those people that is there to serve is our friend, Representative Kyle Mullins. And I could introduce him, and I could say a lot of good things about his commitment to the ALS cause. But instead of me doing that, I'm going to invite my friends Paul and Eileen Miller to just very briefly introduce Kyle and talk about how they know him, and and why they're happy to introduce him today. So Eileen, if you could just say a couple words about Kyle, and then we can have him speak.
Can you hear me? Okay. Well, we met Kyle, over 11 years ago when he was working in Senator Blake's office. He's also a very good friend of ours, but we know him well over 11 years. And we used to go into his office with Senator Blake to ask for funding, and never thought that, we would be meeting him through another way. But he's become a great friend. He lives here locally with us. He then became a state representative. So very, very proud of that. We never thought that that would happen, but he certainly does a great job. But we met him, he's on transportation. We met him because we lost our son to distracted driving. He was the first to be on our bill. He's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person. But unfortunately, his dad was diagnosed with ALS. So we're very close. We've been reaching out to him. We've been kind of guiding him. And he's always been, when we have gone to him, has always been on board with helping us through ALS in the past. And unfortunately, now he's on the other side of the fence. So we love Kyle. We love his family. We're very close. He's always been there for us in the past. And now we want to be there for him to help him with his dad. So I'm going to let Kyle talk. I want Kyle to know we've always been there. He's always been there for our family in the past. And I want Kyle to know now that we're there for him to help him with his dad. He's been here. We've been talking back and forth many, many times personally on a personal level. I don't even know how to thank him for all the things he's done to me in the past. And now I want us to be there for him and his family. So I introduced, Kyle, Tony, we've talked how many times, I don't know, but Kyle on the other side, personally, I know him very, very, very personally on a personal note. So further ado, here's Representative Kyle Mullins.
Thank you so much, Eileen and Paul, my wonderful friends. This is a tough club to be part of, as you all know. However, ALS has entered you into the club, but knowing that there is a structure of support there means a great deal to me as someone who's in the early phases of accepting my father's diagnosis. I appreciate that introduction, that heartfelt introduction so very much. And by way of background, I represent the Scranton area in northeastern Pennsylvania, a little bit of the city of Scranton, and 6 boroughs north of there, where I grew up and where my wife and I are raising our young family, and where my parents live right across town. So, as we go through this process, as we work our way through this club, we're able to be close to my mom and dad and be as helpful and supportive as possible. But you are here to get energized, to be inspired, and to understand that your work toward advocating for treatments and for care and for awareness of this awful disease is not done in futility. As Eileen mentioned years ago, when I was just a young staffer, the state senator I was working for was tied up on the Senate floor. So I, as his legislative director, took the meeting, and I had a, you take a lot of tough meetings because you hear a lot of stories as a legislative staffer or a legislator themselves. But I had a real tough time, and I'll never forget, it was definitely the toughest meeting I ever took. And I had a tough time bouncing back that day or that week, understanding how the cosmos or fate or destiny could be so rough on this family, the Millers, in taking their young son, and then not long after that, rendering a diagnosis of ALS to Paul. I never dreamed of becoming a legislator and being elected to office, a service and an honor that I still consider a dream every day. But I also never dreamed of joining this club, a club that has, kept Eileen, Paul, and I closely intertwined. But it is with a heavy heart, but also with the determination to keep the men and women and their families with their course of ALS, to keep them going, to keep them inspired, to keep them understanding that there are real promising treatments, as the doctor mentioned earlier. My father was diagnosed in the beginning of 2020, seemingly an apt kickoff to quite a year, but we've been going through the process of monitoring his condition, and by the skin of his teeth, he was accepted into a clinical trial, the Heil platform clinical trial at Penn. His breathing was just strong enough that day, and he just concluded the trial, is at least guaranteed now to be on the active drug, and I hope to report to you for many years to come that he's doing well, and that science and medicine and determination and prayers can keep us going long enough for science to save us. Trials do save people. One of the friends who I stay with when I am down in Harrisburg, she was saved by a clinical trial for leukemia, something that wasn't around with her first 2 bouts of leukemia. So there is hope out there, and there is a story to be shared with the legislators you meet with, whether you're meeting with us in the minor leagues in the State House of Pennsylvania, with my friend Speaker Cutler and I, or any of our colleagues, or in the state Senate, or as the doctor mentioned, some critical bills before the Congress. We've seen that your advocacy efforts make a difference, not only in funding these treatments, but also in passing things like the elimination of the 5-month waiting period for Social Security disability, something that my father was able to take advantage of. So, it's I mentioned Speaker Cutler, whose life was also so directly impacted. The other day I was on the House floor, and when you get called up to the Speaker's rostrum, it usually means you were doing something wrong. You were either taking a picture, you were talking out of order. And I felt like I was well behaved that day, and it was Speaker Cutler just asking how my dad was doing. After not seeing Brian for the better part of a year because of COVID and remote voting, he had me and my dad on his mind. So that speaks to where the heart and mind and conscience of our House chamber in Pennsylvania is. And I can tell you that whether you're meeting with a legislative staffer, a member, or someone who's being educated about ALS for the first time in their lives, you are making an impact, and it's a meaningful one. And I'm always here for you, no matter what part of the state you're from. I'd love to remain in touch, be your cheerleaders, and ask for your pep talk once in a while as well. It's a club that none of us asked to be part of, but the fact that we have a club here means a lot. It means a great deal to me personally, and has impact more than you can imagine. So I'm sorry I went on, but I wanted to share that with you. And I want to thank you all for inspiring me. And I hope we can all be together in person soon.
Thank you so much for that important message, Representative Mullins. We are so thankful for your support. Thank you so much. So our Pennsylvania State Advocacy Day of Action is tomorrow, and we've made it really easy for you to take action right from the comfort of your own home at any time that works best for you. Tomorrow morning, you will receive a toolkit to help guide you in your outreach. So even if you're not included on meetings, tomorrow you can still, participate in this. So by utilizing, it's a Google Docs toolkit, you'll be able to find contact information for the key legislators on your side of the state. And we also have handy email and phone call scripts to help guide you in your messages. And of course, as always, feel free to include your ALS story for a personal touch to those. If you are sending emails, you can also attach our white paper that provides a case of support for our $1.2 million ask. And once you've contacted the legislators on your list, we've also made it easy to engage with them on social media by providing their social media handles, along with a suite of pre-made shareable graphics. So again, you'll receive that tomorrow. And I am now proud to introduce one of the most wonderful couples you will ever meet, Brett and Jeannine Schoenecker. Brett and Jeannine have been advocating for the Western Pennsylvania chapter since 2019 and have participated in both our federal and state advocacy efforts. We're really excited to have Brett and Jeannine on the call today to tell you more about what it's like to be an ALS advocate from the perspective of a family living with the disease. Go ahead, Brett and Jeannine.
Our portion is why do we advocate and what has been our experience. So why do we advocate? We advocate because we want to do something to help those that follow us.
So part of helping, we also wanted to figure out what we want to accomplish when we advocate. So what we really want to do is communicate our story. So in crafting the story, we have found that it is okay to be brutally honest and just tell the facts. Because if the room gets uncomfortable, that's okay too, because you're making an impact.
Try not to get too bogged down with lots of details. You have limited time, so make your story about how ALS has affected you and your family.
And as Melissa previously mentioned, it is a really good idea to have your story scripted ahead of time, because I can tell you from experience, it makes you less nervous. And it also really helps you get the points across that you want to get across.
Additionally, don't worry too much about the ask, that your ALS staff will take care of that. So kind of stick to your story. Next section is what we've experienced and what you may expect. First of all, I'll guarantee the day will be very emotional, but it's also very rewarding.
The one thing that we found was we were surprised how much people wanted to hear our story. And we were also really surprised about the emotional impact our story had on the legislators and the staff. So don't underestimate what your story means.
You may want to be prepared to go off script, and don't worry about that, because often the legislators and staff may ask questions about you. You can focus mostly on your story and not worry about the details.
And I can tell you from experience, we're actually very quiet, private people. So at first it was so odd to be so personal. That raw emotion was really, really hard to get over. But I can tell you from experience, you'll get used to that personal aspect.
And this is very important. Keep in mind that your legislators and their staff are just people. Try not to let the position intimidate you. And I promise it gets easier over time. In our experiences, we have found that advocacy has provided us a way to fight back against this disease that we can't beat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brett and Jeannine, for those amazing tips. I hope that they've helped you guys kind of learn how to craft your story and focus on what's important. So with that, Tony, do you have any final words? It looks like we're a little bit over, so thank you guys so much for sticking with us in this session.
I just want to, thank you everyone. It's really great hearing from a diverse group of perspectives, and everyone that's here that's going to advocate, whether you do it tomorrow or a different day or by email, you're going to be great, and people in Harrisburg are eager to hear from you. And we really thank you for being part of this.